Chartley Manor, Staffordshire, the summer of 1586. A brewer rolls a barrel of beer through the gates, and tucked into the stopper, sealed watertight, is a letter. It is written in cipher, and it is addressed to the captive queen held inside, Mary, Queen of Scots. She believes the channel is secret. She believes that at last she is speaking to her friends without the English listening. She is wrong. Every word has already been read. Before that letter reaches her hands, it has been opened in London, copied, deciphered, resealed so cleanly that the wax betrays nothing, and read by the one man in England she most needs to deceive. He is not a soldier. He never leads an army, never wins a duel, never raises his voice. He works in paper. And by the time this summer ends, the paper will have killed a queen. His name is Francis Walsingham, and the machine he built to read other people's secrets is about to do the precise thing it was designed to do. To understand the machine, you first have to understand the man who feared the dark enough to build it. Francis Walsingham was born around 1532 into a well-connected Protestant family in Kent. He studied at Cambridge, trained in the law, and came of age in a country that kept changing its religion by royal command. When the Catholic Mary Tudor took the throne, Walsingham, a committed Protestant, did what many of his faith did. He left. He spent those years in exile among the Protestant cities of the continent, learning languages, learning people, and learning how information moves across borders. But the moment that seems to have marked him most came later. In 1570, he was sent to Paris as Elizabeth's ambassador, and in August of 1572, he was there for the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, when thousands of French Protestants were slaughtered in the streets over the course of a few days. Walsingham's embassy became a refuge for terrified English Protestants. He watched, up close, what becomes of a Protestant minority once the killing begins. He came home with a conviction that never left him, that England was one assassination away from the same fate, that Elizabeth was ringed by enemies who would not stop, and that the only real defense was to know. To know everything before it happened. In December 1573, he became Principal Secretary to the Queen. On paper, an administrator. In practice, the closest thing Elizabethan England had to a Director of Intelligence. Here is where the legend usually takes over. You will read that Walsingham commanded a vast secret service, 53 spies, 18 agents stationed in foreign courts, informers in every capital from Madrid to Constantinople. The truth is both less tidy and more interesting. Walsingham did not run a modern agency with a building, a budget, and a chain of command. He ran something more improvised and more personal, a web of merchants, exiles, scholars, sailors, prisoners, and turncoats. Many were paid out of his own purse. Many were unreliable. Some were working for both sides at once. The historian Stephen Alford, who went back to the archives, describes a system far messier than the myth. Not omniscience, but patient, expensive, often frustrating watching. What made it dangerous was never the head count. It was the method. Walsingham understood three things before almost anyone else in England. First, that letters are the bloodstream of every conspiracy, and a letter can be intercepted, opened, and resealed without the sender ever knowing. He kept men who could lift a seal and forge it back. Second, that a coded letter is not a safe letter. For that he had Thomas Phelips, a small, pockmarked, brilliant man who could read a cipher the way you are reading this sentence, breaking it down by counting how often each symbol appeared, and reasoning out which letters they had to be. Third, and this is the one that mattered most, that the most valuable spy is the enemy's own messenger, turned. A double agent does not merely bring you information. He lets you control what your enemy believes is true. Interception, cryptanalysis, the turned agent. Put those three together and you no longer have a spy network. You have a machine for manufacturing certainty and, when you want it, for manufacturing evidence. Walsingham tested the machine before he ever aimed it at a queen. In 1583, a young Catholic gentleman named Francis Throckmorton was carrying messages between Mary's supporters, the Spanish ambassador, and the French embassy in London. He thought the channel was secure. It was not. Walsingham had a source inside that embassy. Throckmorton was arrested, and in his rooms were the things that hang a man: plans for a foreign invasion and a list of England's Catholic nobles. Under torture, he confessed. He went to the scaffold. The proof of concept worked. Then Walsingham did something cleverer than catching traitors. He helped build the law that would let the machine kill. In 1584, Walsingham and Burghley drew up the Bond of Association, a sworn pledge signed across the country to hunt down and kill anyone who plotted against Elizabeth and anyone who stood to benefit from her death. The next year it hardened into statute, the Act for the Queen's Safety. Read that phrase again: anyone who would benefit. It was written with one person in mind, and in a detail almost too sharp to be true. Mary, Queen of Scots, signed the bond herself. She put her name to the document that would justify her execution. The blade was forged. Now Walsingham needed only the intelligence to bring it down, and the machine delivered. We told the full story of the Babington plot in an earlier episode, so here we'll hold to what it reveals about the method. In 1586, Walsingham opened a secret channel to the imprisoned Mary, those ciphered letters smuggled in a beer barrel at Chartley. Mary thought it a lifeline from her allies. In fact, every letter passed through Walsingham's hands first, was deciphered by Phillips, and only then went on to its reader. When Mary finally wrote a reply approving a plot to assassinate Elizabeth, the trap closed. And then came the act historians still argue over. Phillips added a postscript to Mary's letter, a forgery, in her style, asking the conspirators to name themselves, so the whole network could be rolled up at once. That single forged paragraph is the whole machine in miniature, not merely reading the enemy's mail. Editing it, the line between detecting a plot and manufacturing the evidence for one had never been thinner. Mary did consent, in her own words, to Elizabeth's death, but the channel she trusted was Walsingham's invention from the first day to the last. It is tempting to admire all this as cleverness. The episode owes you the rest of the picture. The machine ran on people, and it used them up. Suspects were racked in the Tower. Catholic priests, many of whom wanted nothing to do with assassination, were hunted, tortured, and executed under laws Walsingham had helped to write. By one count, around 200 Catholics were put to death across the decades the system operated. The informers and double agents who fed the network were themselves disposable. Loyalty ran in one direction only. This was not a gentleman's game. It was a security state in its first raw form, and it was built on fear, Walsingham's fear, which was sincere, and which he turned into policy. And it did not make him rich. That is one of the quiet ironies of his life. Walsingham did spend his own money on intelligence. The Crown's secret funding never matched the need. But when he died, on the 6th of April, 1590, the debts that buried him were as much his dead son-in-law's as his own. He had taken on the obligations of Sir Philip Sidney, the poet and soldier who had married his daughter and died of a battlefield wound. The most feared man in England was, at the end, a man settling someone else's accounts. And here is the final irony. The machine did not outlive its maker. Walsingham had built no institution, no agency, no appointed successor, no system anyone else could simply pick up and run. When he died, the network frayed. Rivals squabbled over the pieces. The single mind that had held it all together was gone, and much of what he knew went into the ground with him. So what is the honest verdict on Walsingham's spy network? Strip away the legend, and two things stay clearly true. He did not possess the all-seeing, infinite web of the storybooks. The famous numbers are shaky, the tale that he knew everything everywhere is myth, and he worked as often in fog as in certainty. But what he did build was real, and it was genuinely new. The first English system to fuse the interception of letters, the breaking of codes, the turning of agents, and the law itself into a single working instrument of the state. It caught real conspirators. It also helped destroy a queen by methods that sit uneasily between detection and entrapment, a line his own forged postscript stepped across. The fairest thing we can say is this. Walsingham was not the omniscient spider of the myth, and he was not a mere clerk. He was an architect of a method, not a building. He proved that a state which reads enough letters, breaks enough codes, and writes its own laws can manufacture not only knowledge but outcomes. He did it out of real conviction and at real cost to himself and to others. The numbers around him were exaggerated almost from the start. The machine itself was not. He died in debt, in a country he had spent 20 years keeping afraid, and the most dangerous thing he ever built was not a network of spies. It was the idea that the safest kingdom is the one where someone is always reading.